for like 50 years, I've been doing talks on building, and I'm kind of tired of going through the same things over and over again. And so I asked Chris and Anya. I wanted to come here this year, and so I did a talk in Bolinas about a month ago about adventures that you can have from your doorstep without getting on an airplane, and I started thinking back of the stuff that I've done in the 50 years that I've lived in Bolinas in West Marin, and I was kind of surprised because I wasn't conscious that I'd done all this stuff. So I'm just going to go through a few of the things that I've done, and maybe it might inspire you guys to look around and see what I mean. Right up there, it seems to me like a ton of things that you could do up there on bicycles or camping or staying overnight or just walking. I don't know how long it would take to get up to the top of one of those things and whether there's paths or not, but if I lived here, I would certainly explore that. So I'll talk about riding cycling. I got back maybe 40 years ago, I had a one-speed Schwinn bike, and I'd go out in the country riding on it. And one day I went about 15 miles, and I said to the kids in town, why don't you put gears on with these bikes? And they said, no, that wouldn't work. The brakes wouldn't work. And but right about that time, a bunch of people in Marin County and down in the town of Saratoga were doing just that. They put 5 speeds on a Schwinn cruiser. And so that started the mountain bike revolution. And so anyway, about 2 years ago or so, I called up my son Will's roommate in college had opened a bike store in Mill Valley, and asked him about getting an electric bike. And he said he'd bought a bike. It was called a Specialized Turbo Levo that he had bought for his wife, and she didn't want it. And those bikes are about $9,000. It's a full suspension bike, and if it didn't even have a motor on it, it would be great on the trails. It just goes over rocks and roots. So I got that bike and started riding it, and it really, it's really kind of changed my life because when I get on that, the first time I press the pedal down, it's like I've got this superpower, and I can go long distances. And and then thinking back about other things I've done with bikes, before I got that bike, I had a mountain bike, and I went to a lake. I went up in the mountains, and then I went down the power pole trails to the lake. And I thought, well, I get down to the lake, I can go around the shore and get to the path on the other side. And when I got down to the lake, it was so steep that I figured there's no way I can make my way around the lake, and I'm going to end up spending the night in the woods. So I saw a log, and I took off my shoes and tied the laces together and wrapped them around the handlebars and put the bike across the log and kicked my way across the lake and got to the other side. Let's see here. Another time I was riding my bike out in the area where it's forbidden by the rangers to ride a bike. We had in Bolinas, if you go 4 miles out of town, you get to a trailhead. And so anyway, I was riding out there, and on a kind of a small dirt road, and I saw a truck parked in the road, a pickup truck, and there were 3 rangers sitting in the pickup truck. So I kind of coasted up to the cab of the truck like I was going to stop, and as soon as I got there, I hit the gas and went past them, and I pretended they were chasing me. I don't think they were, but it was really fun going through and getting, one time I took some acid. I rode my bike out to a lake at sunrise and took some acid. And I was sitting at the lake, and as the sun was coming up, and a storm came along, and lightning hit the lake at the other end of the lake. And then I got a flat tire, and I had to walk the bike all the way home. Other stuff.
There's got to be more to that story.
Well, no, I mean it was I mean, well, it's a powerful experience. I mean, lightning hitting the lake by itself in a normal state of consciousness is enough of a jolt. But stoned on acid, it was a memorable event. Skateboarding. The kids in Bolinas have a kind of a tradition of I started skating when I was 65, and I really wish I'd started earlier. But anyway, and what I do skating, I don't get air and I don't ride in pools. I just try to go find a decent downhill slope and carve back and forth. And so the kids in the Bolinas who are really good skaters, they have a tradition of on a full moon, they walk up to the top of the mountain and skate about 2 miles down to the what we was a Pantol camp, and so I have done that. I have a thing called a carve board, where the axles turn and it turns really radically, so you can carve really deeply, and that's the only way I can slow down on a skateboard. Most good skaters will slide the board sideways and slow down, and I can't. I've tried doing it, and my mind knows what to do, but my body won't do it. And I think maybe if I worked at it, so anyway, I have to get off before things get too radical, and I'm going to end up on the pavement. And anyway, so one morning I went about 4:30 in the morning. I went over to the spot where you park, and then you have to walk up the paved road to the top. And I got there and I saw all these vehicles, highway patrol and trucks going up the road. And I thought, oh, so they must be shooting a commercial. So I waited till they all went up and I towed my skateboard on a leash like a dog and got up to the top, and there was a big catering table set up there. So I stashed my board and went over to the catering table and got coffee and croissants and started talking to the people there, and I ended up talking to one guy who was, it was a commercial for an SUV, maybe a Hondas or something, and they had cut the sides off of the cars so that they could film the family inside. So anyway, we talked and had a good conversation, and then I got my board and skated down the mountain. Joshua Tree. There was a skateboard shop in San Francisco called Purple Skunk, and I would kind of hang out there. And I went there one day, and they said, "Well, we're all going down to Joshua Tree, which is this isn't out your doorstep at all, and which is a couple of 100 miles because there's a 3-mile downhill, and it's perfect for skating." So I went down there and met these guys. And we got up early in the morning, and they had a van and a camera, a movie camera, and we made 3 runs down the hill before the sheriff came along. And about a month later, I was in San Francisco. I went into the Apple store, and there was a film playing like 8 feet wide on the wall, and it was us skating. And some guy there, "Hey, that's me," some of the other things, kayaking. I wanted to. Bolinas is maybe 10 miles, 12 miles from San Francisco, and so I decided to kayak into San Francisco. So I went up to Marshall, which is on Tomales Bay, and a rental place, and I rented an ocean kayak. I didn't tell them what I was going to do with it on a Saturday, and so I wanted to go on my own power from my doorstep into San Francisco. So I had flares and a horn. A friend of mine was a kayaker, and he said, you got to watch out for the ships coming in because they can't slow down if you get in their way, And so I took the kayak down to the beach in my truck and left it there, drove home. It's about a mile. And then I walked down to the beach. I was on my own power, got in the kayak. Took me about 6 hours to get to the Golden Gate Bridge. And I stopped a couple of places and had a power bar and stretched. And then I got to the bridge, and then it took me 2 hours to get from the bridge to the Cove Aquatic Park, which is a cove where there's a dolphin club and the South End Rowing Club where traditionally people swim in the cove there, and it's cold. And but anyway, I got into the cove. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon. I could hear there was a blues festival going on in a nearby army base that you could hear in the cove. And I got a Polish hot dog, and I got a couple of Irish coffees at the cafe across the street. And my wife picked me up in the truck, and we drove the kayak back and dropped it off. And it was kind of a perfect day. Another kayak adventure I had was a friend of mine gave me a kayak, a surfing kayak. And I took it out. Bolinas, there's a lagoon in Bolinas and a big tidal flow going in and out. And so I went out into the wave zone, and I caught a wave, and it was okay. And then I went back out, caught another wave, and I got dumped. And I didn't have a leash, and I didn't have a life jacket on. If I'd had a leash, I could have held onto the paddle, and the kayak would have stayed nearby. So I had an old wetsuit on that was kind of stiff and had a hood on it. And I tried swimming in to the shore, and I couldn't make any headway. The tide was coming out. And I thought, shit, I'm a lifeguard. I'm an ex-lifeguard, and I'm going to have to call for help here. And that's going to really be embarrassing. I mean, I don't think I was going to drown, but I was a little bit scared. And some guy on one of those stand-up foils saw me and paddled over and towed me back to my kayak and dragged it up on the beach and got across the channel and went home. I think that one of the things I think that's really important as you get older is to stay active and to move around and I think also if you're building, it seems it's a physical act, but at the same time you're not doing anything for your cardiovascular system, and you're not, the three elements of fitness are muscular strength and flexibility and what's the third one? What is it? Yeah, I'm blanking out. The older you get, the more you blank out. Often I'm telling people stories, and I forget why I was telling the story, and almost always I ask, where was I? What led up to this? And they almost always remember. But anyway, that's just one of the things about getting older. Muscular strength, cardiovascular, and flexibility. Yeah, those three elements. And for 20 years I published fitness books. I did shelter. I did the 2 books on dome building, and then I did shelter. And then I did shelter 2 in 1978, and then I thought, well, that's it with publishing. And I was working as a carpenter and doing landscaping and trying to make do small scale farming, and I saw I had a sore back, and I saw a book called Stretching in the Whole Earth magazine, and I sent away for the book, and I did the stretches, and it cured my back. And the book was on stretching for athletes, and I called up the guy, I called up the guy. His name was Bob Anderson. He lived in L.A., and it was a homemade book. And I said, well, what about including stretches for carpenters and plumbers and waitresses? And he said, yeah, I could do that. And I said, well, how many copies of this book have you sold? And he said, 35,000 out of his garage. So I got back in touch with Random House, who was distributing my books, and they said, I think this book could sell 300,000 copies. But anyway, that book ended up selling 3.5 million copies, and it was in 23 languages, including it's in Latvian, and that led me into. And then I did a book on running, Galloway's book on running, and a book on weight training, and I hung out with those jocks for about 20 years, and I learned a lot of stuff about fitness. And then I got back into doing building books when I saw somebody who had built a couple of things. What is this? Is I'm holding this too close? I'm getting this rumble here. Thank you too, Robin. Yeah, okay. Bye bye. I'm staying at Robin's place. What an amazing place. Anyway, I saw this guy who had built a couple of things out of the book Shelter, and I thought, well, if he built those out of Shelter, then I'm going to start doing building books again. So I got back into doing building books. But all along, I've tried to, if I get depressed, maybe I said this yesterday, if I get depressed, I find that exercise and not just exercise, not just like, I have a group of running friends that I've been running with for about 30 years now. We all run the Dipsy race, which is the oldest cross-country race in America. It goes, it's about a 7-mile race, and it starts out going up 600 steps out of Mill Valley. And so I hang out with those guys, and so and now we walk rather than us older ones walk rather than run. Although I did run the race this year. But anyway, I find that if I'm depressed, if I just force myself to get out and do something, I always will feel better and get over the depression. And so that's why I do all this stuff, running, riding a bike. I don't surf anymore. I'm too slow getting up. I think if I worked at it, if I practiced crouching and jumping up, I could do it. But again, surfing is just too crowded now. When I started surfing, there were no wetsuits, and I kind of arranged my classes at Stanford. So I majored in economics because there were no Friday classes, and I could go over to ride over the hill and spend half the week in Santa Cruz surfing. But anyway, but throughout my life, I've done that, and I think that that's a key to a lot of things in life is to stay active, and in staying active to have fun. And when I was training as a competitive runner, to find trails that are interesting and look for animal bones and mushrooms and things like that. Let's see. Another kayaking adventure I had. I went with a friend. There's a creek called Paper Mill Creek nearby, and so we put in the creek, and it was running pretty fast. And we got down to a spot where there was a log across the creek. Couldn't get around it, and we got sort of slammed up against the log. And so what are we going to do here? And so my friend Kent, he dove under the log and came up on the other side. And I did the same thing. And as I came up, I just got this chill, because what the Forest Service would do in that creek, they would sometimes put netting on from the log down to the bottom. And if there had been a net there, we would have been dead. And it was just, sometimes brushes with death are invigorating. And so we survived, and we got, and then Kent broke a paddle. And so that was the end of our trip. And there was a ranger who was hassling us and waiting for us downstream. So we got out and got back to the truck and went to a bar and had a Bloody Marys and went home. Wherever I am, if I'm in New York and I don't know what to do, sometimes I'll just walk outside the hotel and see what happens. Walk in some direction, just start walking. And in cities, one thing I did in New York one time in January, I rode the subway out to Coney Island, and there was nobody out there except these Russian ladies, 4 of them sitting on benches, big Russian, and I found the Coney Island is like 2 miles of teak decking. And then I've done it also, rode out to Rockaway during the early summer where you can go swimming, and there's actually surfing. And in San Francisco lately, I've started walking. San Francisco is my hometown, and I've started walking in San Francisco and discovering all sorts of new things. I mean, if you're driving through a city, it's one thing. If you go on a bike, you see a lot more. I have a little scooter, a 3-wheeled scooter. kind of a high-tech one of those. I forget what they call those little scooters. It's a push scooter, not electric. And so sometimes if I go into the city, say if I'm going to go to the Fillmore Auditorium to see some music, there's a problem with parking your car and getting the windows smashed. So I'll park maybe a couple of miles away from the auditorium on a well-lit street, and then take my scooter and scoot, and maybe go 3 times as fast as walking. And then I get someplace where there's some bushes or something, and stash the scooter, and then go hear the music, and then go back. Let's see. So I walked from my house into San Francisco. It was took me about 8 hours, and it did the same thing. I walked down to the beach from my doorstep, and my son Evan met me down there with a kayak, and I took my clothes off and swam across the channel to the other side, and it was really cold, and put my clothes back on, got a latte at Stinson Beach, and then walked into San Francisco and took the bus back home. That was a lot of fun. And then another time I decided I was going to walk around the Point Reyes Peninsula. Point Reyes Peninsula is kind of like an island. There's Tamales Bay at one end, and there's the Bolinas Lagoon at the other end, and a valley in between. And in 13 million years, they say that will open up, so it will be an island. So I wanted to walk around the whole thing. So I started out early in the morning from my house with a backpack. I got down to the beach, and I walked along the beach, and I got out to I got as far. I was going to walk along. Well, I got as far as the evening that night, and I camped out. What I had done is and there's an estero that you have to cross on that walk at Drake's Bay. So what I had done is I'd taken one of these foam surfboards, and it's Lemon Tour Beach. It's like a 2-mile walk from the parking lot to the estero. So I had wheels, and I towed the surfboard to the estero, and I buried it in the sand. And so then when I came back, I would be able to get across the estero. So I got to the estero the next afternoon, and the wind was blowing about 30 miles an hour right at me, and I thought I'm never going to make it across with a heavy pack. I'll wait till the morning. And I slept on the beach, had the worst night's sleep of my life. The wind was still blowing the next morning. So I buried the surfboard in the sand again and walked back to the parking lot, and then I walked all the way around the long way. And I got to, and I met a couple of rangers. I met 3 rangers on that trip, and there's a couple of different types of rangers. One type of ranger, they're the people who love the outdoors, and the mountain, Mount Tamalpais, and the ocean. There's another type of ranger who wants to bust you. They're frustrated cops, and so their whole thing is enforcement. So anyway, the one ranger I met, she was great, and so the third night, I camped out, and I was walking towards the Point Reyes Lighthouse. So this was my 3rd day, and the ranger stopped me, and she wanted to, she carded me. I gave her my license, and she looked it up, and okay, and you can't camp out there, and I had a sleeping bag and everything, and she didn't. She couldn't bust me because she didn't catch me camping. So I went on, and I decided at that point that if I got accosted by a ranger again, I was going to say, no, I'm not going to give you my driver's license. I'm out here and just to see what happened, and maybe film that person. You guys ought to be out doing something more productive than trying to bust people for. And so anyway, I got to the lighthouse, which was a wonderful experience to see the lighthouse, which was not still in operation, but they'd preserved it. And I had kind of bloody feet at that time, so I gave up walking all the way around, and got Evan to come pick me up. looking around in my town and how you could extrapolate that to what you could do here, like there's a canyon where we get our water called Arroyo Hondo. It's a very deep canyon, and so I've been up that, and I've made a trail up to. There's a waterfall up above the road, and there's another canyon that's parallel to that that's very little known, called McCormick Canyon, and so three of us went up that one time. Um, uh, we've got lakes that are on the outskirts of Bolinas, and there's all kinds of things you can do out there. One night I went on my bike. This was before the electric bike, on a full moon night, and camped out. And there you can swim there. And then north of Bolinas, there's a place called Double Point, which is a very difficult to get to. And I built a little driftwood shack there. And so I would go. It takes you have to maybe an hour and a half walk on the beach, and you have to get around Abalone Point on a low tide. And so I'd go up there and camp out there on the beach. Well, just then I was thinking back about things that I did in the past. I guess I've always, and then I wasn't conscious of looking for adventures, but I think that I always was. Like when I went to Stanford, we rented a cottage in Santa Cruz for $20 a month. Four of us did, and so in 1955 there was the Great Flood in Santa Cruz, where the bridges all collapsed and the water was over the parking meters in downtown. And so my roommate George and I took our surfboards and put in the river, which was a dumb thing to do, really. There were parts of houses coming down the river, and cars and refrigerators, and the bridges had collapsed, and we went under the bridges and got down to the beach to the roller coaster, and the cops were going to arrest us. I'm not sure what for, and then they got diverted, and so we got out of there. Oh yeah, one time my motorcycle got towed away in Santa Cruz. It was in a garage, so I waited till about midnight and went into the garage and wheeled it outside and started it up and took it home.
Lloyd, how many times have you been arrested?
Yeah, I got arrested. I spent 3 nights in jail one time when I was at the Russian River. I guess we were about 17 or 18, and we had a 6-pack of Country Club in the car, and so the sheriff busted us and took us into the drunk tank in Santa Rosa, and we spent 3 nights there. And I mean, it was a lesson, really, because it was so weird and horrible. And I guess that's the only time I've been arrested. I've dodged it, I mean, if you were around in the 60s, 50s and 60s and smoking weed, you got really paranoid, and it's still that way when I see a sheriff's car. It's, I mean, it's so different now. I mean, people would go to jail for a couple of years for having a joint, and I kind of don't like to follow the rules, and I don't mind, I don't mind trespassing. I really wouldn't like people trespassing on my property, so I mean, I'm not proud of it, but especially if my running friends are all like mountain warriors. They're really into it, into the countryside and the mountain and the creeks and the meadows, and sometimes you'll get somebody will buy land and put up a cyclone fence that goes across a trail that's been there for 100 years. So we just go out with wire cutters and do stuff. So a lot of things that I do are not legal. It's just it's just my nature, I think. The frog and the scorpion. The scorpion comes to the river and he sees the frog and he says, "Would you give me a ride across to the other side?" And the frog says, no, because you'll sting me. And the scorpion says, no, I'm going to sting you. We would both drown. So the frog thinks about it. He says, okay, hop on. So they get halfway across the river, and the scorpion stings the frog. And the frog goes, what are you doing? And the scorpion says, it's my nature. So anyway, I think that's maybe... Oh, yeah, I another thing I do, which is pretty illegal, is I go hunting. I hunt ducks in Golden Gate Park. I have shells that are... and I mean, people... I mean, that's just that's my nature. I have a low noise shells, 22 shells. And so there's a pond there. And so I'll cruise up alongside some ducks maybe and look around and get my gun out and roll down the window and shoot. One time I shot a duck, and he didn't even know he was dead. And he flew out into the middle of the pond. So I took my clothes off except for my underpants and took a backpack and waded out and got the duck. And, hunting and foraging and fishing are also ways to have fun. And I love it's exciting, and especially if you can, mushroom hunting, you can combine running and foraging. So those things all are, yeah. As I look at this list, I'm kind of embarrassed that there's a whole bunch of other things here that are illegal. Ate it. Yeah. Yeah. So, I think here, I just encourage people to get out and do something. Sometimes just walk out the door, but here it looks to me like that's the key up there. And I would think that there's all kinds of stuff you could do. I don't know if they ride electric mountain bikes or just mountain bikes up there. Too steep? Really? Aren't there trails? Are there lakes? There aren't lakes you can walk to. There must be creeks, but the creeks... another thing that I do is on my way home from Mill Valley, you have to go over a mountain to get to Bolinas. Bolinas is on the ocean. And so there's a spot there on my way home where there's a canyon with pools in it and waterfalls. So pretty often I will stop and go to the pool, take my clothes off, get in the pool, and coast up till the waterfall's hitting me on the head, and then I get out and I'm just my chi is soaring for hours, and it's kind of like to get out of your comfort zone. I think is really a good thing, and I'm always working on it because and if I push myself to do it every time I do it, I'm so glad that I do. And I've been swimming in the bay in San Francisco. I try to do it on Fridays. And I wimp out by wearing a shorty wetsuit. Most of the swimmers there do not do that. And it's a tradition, a 100-year-old tradition. There's a whole group of women that are in their 60s. They are badass. And they swim, and they can... One woman swam from San Francisco to the Farallone Islands, a distance of 17 miles. And she started out at 3 o'clock in the morning. And when she got out to the Farallones, the water was like 48 degrees. And she was a nurse, and she went to work the next day. But my tradition there on Fridays is I'll go to North Beach. That's a bit of an adventure, and go to a cafe and have a latte and the pastry. And then I'll go to the cove and put on my shorty wetsuit and swim. I can stay in the water for maybe the water right now is maybe 60 degrees, but it gets down to 50 degrees. And years ago I used to do it without a wetsuit, and I'm kind of trying to work my way back to that. With cold water, if you get in the cold water, your body will make an adjustment, and after a minute or two, maybe a couple of minutes, I'm feeling not so bad, and at 3 minutes, I'm feeling okay. I have to get out before... I don't have much body fat, and I have to get out before I get hyperthermia, and that happened to me one time. I swam out, and a current was against me when I was coming back, and so I was in the water for 28 minutes, and I was kind of dizzy. And I think what's happening with hyperthermia, your organs start shutting down. So I got to the beach and I went into the club, and I turned on the shower, and some guy said to me, "You're scalding yourself." And okay, so I backed off on the hot shower and took a sauna, and and then a cold shower after the sauna, and I felt incredible. And I went to a body worker, a Rolfer. I had an appointment. He's the guy who said to me, "If it doesn't kill you, it's good for you." So those kind of things, if you do that, and in fact, last year, Chris and I jumped into 2 different creeks here, and they are really cold. But if you do it, try it. Just try it. Just say, "No, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get underwater. I'm going to hold my breath and stay underwater." And you get out, and you will, you will be amazed at how good you will feel. Anyway, anybody have? So I have a ton of stuff here, but I think that's enough. Anybody have any? What can you do around here? If you can't ride a mountain bike up in these trails, can you hike up to the peaks here? There are lakes. Yeah, I bet the lakes are cold. Yeah. Well, and also there's hot springs all around here, I think, that make for. That's what I last year I went to maybe 7 or 8 hot springs between San Francisco and here and back, and I've gone to a couple of them on this trip, but now I'm gonna do that again. I drove, yeah. I did a permaculture thing in Santa Barbara last weekend, and then I drove here. I really like the towns Del Norte and Monte Vista, and I don't know if you guys have seen this guy who carves things. It's between Durango and Pagosa Springs. It's by the side of the road. There's this guy who carves animals and people, and he's got hundreds and hundreds of sculptures that he's done there. So, and also on this trip, I went to Las Vegas, and because I wanted to see the Sphere. I kind of like Las Vegas right now. I think it's got an energy to it, in spite of what everybody thinks about the town. And I went to the Sphere. I had seen the Sphere last year on my way back from here, from the outside. I took an Uber to a place where you could see from the outside. They run a show on the Sphere is a 500-foot wide dome with all LEDs, and and so yeah.
You were talking about where people can go here. The lady where I'm camping up there on the Rio Grande National Park said that her and her partner walked all the way up the Willow Creek Trail to the top. It's about 11 miles, 10 or 11 miles, she said, and there was snow on the mountains at the end of that. But there's Crestone Lake, and what's the other lake up there? And they said Willow Lake. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I don't think I can.
Well, did they do it in one day?
Yeah.
Well, so you take a backpack and spend the night up there,
Came back down.
But I think it might be dangerous at this time of year. I mean, if you get a snowstorm, I don't know. You could end up. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you. It's kind of a weird talk.